Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well and thank you for joining us for another video. I've recently done a few videos which look at different aspects of the claims that the moon landings were all fake. And the other week I received a response video from flat earther Quinfy, who attempted to debunk them in a very charming manner.
Yeah, it's perfect. You look like a door salesman. You're just a clown, you f***ing idiot. I think your eyes are full with dog puke, piece of shit.
I'm just going to tell myself that he's respectfully calling me a pizza sheet. The internet is full of such lovely people, and it's wise sometimes to try and protect yourself from too much loveliness. So before we delve into more of Quinfy's sweet talking, let me give a quick shout out to Atlas VPN, who are sponsoring this video. Atlas VPN is personally how I choose to protect myself whilst online. It reroutes all of my data through one of its secure servers around the world, which keeps prying eyes at bay. I like the fact that it has a tracker blocker to prevent websites from tracking your information, and I like the fact that it has a breach scanner which lets me check to make sure that none of my email addresses have been compromised. I really like the fact that it lets me choose which country I want my data to be rerouted through, so I can decide which country I want particular websites to think I'm viewing from. But most of all, I like the fact that I can put it on as many devices as I like. Not just on my computer, I've got it on my phone, I can put it on the kids' tablets to make sure that even they're safe whilst online as well. So if you'd like this same peace of mind, then head on over using my link in the description down below. Not only can you get a whopping 83% off their 3-year plan, but for a limited time only you'll receive an additional 3 months extra free, and all with a 30-day full money back guarantee. Now, aside from him obsessing a little too much over Rusty, Quinfy believes he spotted a problem with the shadows in the Buzz Aldrin photo that I've covered previously, which apparently proves it wasn't taken on the moon.
Do you understand? If there is light, there is also shadows. So the astronaut are taking the picture here, have the sun in his back, and Buzz have the shadow on his right hand. More or less at 2 o'clock about. So the astronaut that is taking the picture have the sun in his back, and this astronaut have the sun at let's say 2 o'clock. Do you understand that, idiot? So we can call this fake.
The photo is of Buzz Aldrin, name is clearly visible on the suit, and the photo was taken by Neil Armstrong. Now, Buzz clearly has the sun in his back, but Quinfy's trying to argue that the shadow we see in Buzz's visor is from Armstrong, who is taking the photograph. Even though we can see Armstrong reflected in the visor, and there's a gap between the shadow and Armstrong. And we can even see a different shadow that Armstrong is casting behind him because he's facing Buzz. So with the sun on Buzz's back, that would put the sun lighting up Armstrong's front. So I put together a totally 100% accurate replica of the Apollo landings. Sort of. We have Buzz with his curved reflective visor, the sun over his left shoulder aiming at his back, Armstrong standing in front of Buzz with the lunar module situated to his right, and the shadows that cast on the ground and in the visor are an exact match to those of the Apollo photo. Seems Quinfy struggles to fully grasp how reflections work. But what made this torrent of abuse all the more hilarious to me is he's using 3D animation software for this, and he's clearly doing it himself judging by the included animations he's put in. And such software allows you to replicate the setups for these images, including the basic lighting, to see firsthand if the photos look the way they should for such setups. And he still managed to get it wrong. I mean, even if the photos were actually taken in a studio, they would still need to be lighting there that physically causes the shadows on the ground and in the helmet, and to create the effect that he thinks exists would need 2 lights, which he's confirmed himself by having to render a light source behind both Armstrong and Buzz, but a light powerful enough to create a shadow clearly visible in the visor would not only cast a shadow of Buzz behind him, but would put light in the shadow that we see in front of Buzz, which would then light up the ground, so the shadow wouldn't be jet black. He then repeats the same saga with a different photograph, throws in some more creative animations, and then gets to claiming that the backgrounds of these two images from Apollo 15 are identical, so this must be a studio wall rather than the moon.
Changing backdrops or front drops, whatever you like to call it.
The two photographs are both from magazine 87, numbers 11781 and 11837. Now, all the original Apollo scans can be found on March to the Moon, which is incidentally where I always go for reference. 11837 is one of a sequence of images rotating a full 360 degrees on the spot, so we can merge all of these together into a 360 panorama. And while 11871 isn't itself part of a panorama, there is a 360 degree sequence of images from nearby which shows the position of the solar wind sail in relation to the lunar module. That's strange. I mean, I can't see any form of studio building anywhere, but the photos are from either side of the lunar module. So you're looking at a vantage point there of 30 or 40 meters apart. Even with hills way off in the distance, you should expect to see some shift in perspective between them. But, I mean, Quinfy's photos clearly show that the ridgetops line up perfectly. How bizarre. Let me just check the originals a second. Okay, one of them's slightly slanted, so we'll rotate that around to correct the orientation, just like Quinfy's done. Oh, those hills don't seem a perfect match. There's clearly a shift in perspective there. But Quinfy's photos didn't show that. Let's just check the originals against Quinfy's video for a moment. Okay, well 11781 is a perfect match. But hold on, his 11837 photo doesn't match the original. I had to resize 781 to 71.5% to match Quinfy's video. But if I scale 11837 to the same 71.5%, it's much smaller than Quinfy's. So Quinfy's got two different size photos. I have to resize it to 75.5 to get it to match the white object on the left-hand side. But even then, the right side of the image is shifting inwards, which only happens when the image is being distorted. Surely Quinfy isn't being a dishonest pizza sheet here and intentionally distorting the image to make the backgrounds line up. And the funny thing is that in 2008, the Japanese Selene probe was orbiting the moon at a distance of about 62 miles, and it was fitted with a stereo pair of terrain mapping cameras, which combined to be able to create complete 3D scans of areas of the moon. And one part that they scanned was Hadley Ridge, which is where Apollo 15 landed. And the Japanese Space Agency themselves pulled up that area of Hadley Ridge where the Apollo 15 astronauts had visited, and their 3D terrain scans perfectly matched the terrain seen in the Apollo 15 photos. And finally, he tries to take a poke at a video I did about how the lunar module looked.
Apollo 16, 17. I find a lot of similar bullshit on those modulas. Each screw is on the same spot. Look at those bumps and cavities. They're all in the same spot. I won't be surprised if this is the same modula. They use it multiple times. Because if the moon landings are fake, you're not going to use a new modula each time. That's logic.
The lunar modules look similar, so therefore they must be the same. So I guess whenever we go to an airport now and we see dozens of planes that all look the same with all the bolts in the same place, then they must all really be the same plane? Including the lunar modules which were used for testing, Grumman built over 20 of them. Of the fully fledged lunar modules, Grumman completed construction of 12, with 3 more that were partially built but never completed due to the termination of the Apollo program. Now, these were not just thrown together with whatever random things they found lying around. The pieces were all fabricated to a specification, so of course they're going to look similar. However, small changes to designs do happen often over time as lessons are learned from the more it gets used. Now, of the 12 completed lunar modules, the ones that Quinfy is comparing here are LM11 and LM12, which were flown on Apollos 16 and 17. They were the final 2 completed lunar modules, and they were built in succession. So they're the ones likely to look most similar, because the earlier missions were most likely to find things that could be altered or improved. Now, both of these lunar modules and Apollo 15s did look different to the previous ones due to having a longer engine bell. And if we look at the rear of Apollo 11's Eagle compared to Apollo 16 and 17, there is a clear difference in the insulation. And we can also see that on the Apollo 16 liftoff video, the force of the engine blast at liftoff actually damages some of the insulation blankets on the rear. And the photos of the Apollo 16 lunar module returning to orbit show the exact same damage. If that's not the same lunar module in orbit as in the photos on the surface, then that is some unbelievable attention to detail by NASA to perfectly match those models used for the takeoff video and the orbit photos so perfectly with the life-size model on a studio set. And begs the question, how could they get such small details so perfectly accurate and yet manage to make what conspiracy theorists claim are such glaringly obvious blunders? Well, that's going to wrap it up for another video. As always, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments down below. While you're down there, if you enjoyed this video and you haven't already done so, then please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons, and then hopefully we'll see you in the next video.